Man, when life hits you, it hits hard. It's like everything kind of all comes at once. When one thing happens, a bunch of other things happen at the same time. Uh, I was in a relationship for 4 years, and it kind of just ended out of the blue. And I guess there were always, little signs, but for the most part, it really did end pretty abruptly. I got my identity stolen right after that. I got my social security leaked. I had somebody start opening up lines of credit in my name. Literally like 3 days after. And we were living together, so she actually broke up with me on the first day of our new lease for our apartment. So thankfully the management was really lenient with us, all things considered, but I had like a few days to figure out a new living situation. So I had to spend a few nights sleeping in my car. I had to get all my stuff moved out within like 2 days. So pretty crazy stuff. But when it happened initially, in a weird way, I guess the first thing I felt was relief. Because especially in the last month, I had just gone on like a week-long trip. And she was gonna go with me, but then decided pretty late that she wasn't gonna go. And when I got back from that, everything was quite different. I could tell something had gone on. And so it's pretty much just like a month of I don't know, like a slow burn kind of dread feeling. And I keep trying to talk to her about stuff and like ask her what was going on, and it'd just be like a generic kind of like, oh no, nothing's going on, nothing's wrong, and I'm just having a bad day. But you know what that means. I knew what that meant. So, if I'm being honest, things really weren't that bad. And we actually had, for the most part, yeah, probably for the most part, I think we had a pretty good relationship. Especially the first couple years. There were some really rocky moments in the beginning. But I'd say, we started out communicating pretty well, pretty decent. Yeah, I don't know. She would, say very, I guess, strongly worded things to me all the time, talking about like marriage, talking about wanting to spend the rest of her life with me. And I guess, probably the first sign for me was at the point she started talking about those things. I was very much like, I don't know about that just yet. Uh, that she was very adamant on that, and so was her family. And yeah, I don't know, I felt pretty uncomfortable by it at first. But I would say, really in the last few months, after having been together for 4 years, we lived together for almost 2 years in our own apartment. And when I was on the trip, funny enough, actually, I went on this trip with my brother. We went to Guadalupe Mountains. And we were backpacking. And on one of the nights, we were pretty much stuck in a blizzard. And, the tent was caving in. It was coming up off the ground. Like, it was literally picking me up and moving me a few inches. So I was just trying to, like, flatten out and be as heavy as I could. And my brother was up all night. Like, I don't even think he got more than an hour of sleep. He was up all night, constantly readjusting the tent, going outside, coming back in. And it was like 10-degree weather. You look outside, everything was covered in ice. The wind was like deafeningly loud. It was crazy. I just slept through the whole thing pretty much. I was like, I don't know, I was so tired, man. We had a crazy hike before. The day before, we had this insane hike. And both of us at a certain point thought we might not make it back. So, needless to say, I was exhausted, man. I was all tuckered out, and I was like, he's got it. He's got this. I'm just gonna sleep. But in my restful slumber, I actually had a thought, pretty much for the first time. And I was like, you know what? I think I do want to marry her. I think I'm glad that she's the person I'm gonna spend my life with. I didn't ever really have much of a problem seeing us being together for a long time. It's mostly the idea of marriage, because I was always worried. Once you get married to somebody, I've seen this too much, where it kind of feels like it breeds complacency. And I guess there were signs throughout our relationship where she was a very temperamental person, and would make pretty big rash decisions, very emotional decisions. And I was of the mind that even though I wanted to be with her, marriage would probably be the thing that killed the relationship. Because now there would be this level of complacency, and there would be this, I guess, one-sided investment on my end. And now there wouldn't be anything for her, pretty much. There wouldn't be anything she would have to do effort-wise to maintain the relationship anymore. And I felt pretty confident about that, and I still think that was probably the case. But yeah, that night during the blizzard, and I was having thoughts too, like, I was half asleep, so I wasn't super worried or super stressed, but I was like, we might die here. We were pretty close to the edge of the mountain, and like I said, it kept picking up the whole tent. It kept picking me up, and just moving me from side to side. It was probably the strongest wind I've ever been in. And it was freezing outside. It was completely dry up there, but still everything was covered in ice, and there was no water anywhere. That's how cold it was. Just freezing, any condensation in the air just turning straight to ice. So while I was having these mixed thoughts of like, this might be it, we might die here. But I was also like, I really do want to marry her when I get back. I actually thought that. And I guess it's kind of crazy how those things work. Where in relationships, and I guess this is something I've noticed more and more, is I guess it seems like healthy relationships really have to have an imbalance of, I don't know if you call it investment or attraction, but it feels like one person needs to like the other person more, and the person who's less emotionally invested needs to be the more emotionally stable person. Because the second that person becomes more attached, then the less emotionally stable person, for whatever reason, no longer finds them attractive and cuts pretty quick. And this is something I've observed in many of my friends. It's something I've observed in my last 2 relationships. And it seems to be pretty true. If you're the more grounded person, I think you have to not be as emotionally attached to them. And the second you do, then you're pretty much on a time bomb. And it's funny that our whole relationship, and this is the first relationship I've been in where it really felt like I was less emotionally invested throughout the course. And things had started out pretty weird between us. There's too much to get into right now. But I was pretty much of the mind that we were just going to be something like casual, not really a serious, committed relationship. And so I kind of carried that throughout the whole relationship, where I was obviously very invested. Like, I worked a job for 2 years that I hated, working 12-hour shifts in a warehouse just to build financial stability. If she ever needed help with anything, I would drop everything I was doing, drive however far I needed to go help her. I would leave my job, drive 30, 40 minutes. I was very, very invested in that way, but emotionally, I think I was probably a lot less attached throughout the majority of our relationship. But it's just funny that the second I started to, it clicked in my head, and I was like, I think I'm ready to get some emotional attachment to this person. And as soon as I get back, everything's just different. I don't know how that works, but it's just a crazy coincidence. And I think there's probably something deeper there. But yeah, we signed a new lease, and 4 days before she gave me the talk, she was texting me like every day while I was at work. Like, hey, make sure you sign the lease. Don't forget to sign the lease. Hey, the lease is almost due. Don't miss the cutoff date. And then as soon as I do, literally a couple days later, I get back home from work that night, and she's like, actually, she texted me beginning of that day, as soon as I went to work. I think I might have still been in the car on the way to work that morning. And she texted me and was like, hey, when you get back today, we need to have a talk. And man, imagine having to work a 12-hour shift, just having that in the back of your mind, like, fuck, that's it. That's it. Because I had known, like I said, that whole month, things had been just completely off. So I was like, this isn't just a talk. This is the talk. This is it. So I kind of had to just put that in the back of my mind for 12 hours. Like, already start mentally prepping. Like, what am I going to do? We just signed the lease, What am I going to do coming out of this? What's my next step? So I guess maybe it's good I had that mental preparation, that time to kind of think, but I was really trying not to think about it because I couldn't focus on my job and also be like, God, man, things are going to be a lot different. So I kind of built my whole life around her in a lot of ways. Financially, schedule-wise, I got her to start doing jiu-jitsu with me, which, for reasons I'll get into later, was a terrible idea. That was probably the worst decision I've ever made. Yeah, it's terrible. But I was working a lot of extra hours, a job I hated, left a job that I really enjoyed, because I was like, do you want to try and buy a house in the next couple of years? She was talking to me pretty adamantly about marriage and about spending the rest of our lives together and having kids and all that. So I was like, okay, well, if you're invested, I didn't say it like this, but in my mind, it's like, okay, if you're invested, if you're willing to do that, then I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that we're financially stable. I'm working as much as I can. Because that's never really something my dad did growing up. He would always spend all of our money. I kind of grew up like dirt poor because of that. And so I wanted to be different. I wanted to be as different as I could be in that regard. So I was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that she didn't have to worry about, and our kids, our future kids, didn't have to worry about the kind of financial instability I had growing up and the stress I saw that put on my mom. I never wanted her to have to go through that. So, and also, at the time she just started jiu-jitsu, so I was like, if you're really enjoying that, which she seemed to be probably a little too much, we'll get into that later. I was like, all the time that I was spending training, I'll put that aside. I'll just work, and you can have all the fun. I want you to have something you enjoy. I want you to have a hobby that feels like it gives your life meaning. Because it, did that for me. I got a really bad shoulder injury a couple years ago, but before that, I was, I wanted to be a professional competitor. I was working on starting training for MMA. I was training jiu-jitsu 6 days a week. I quit my job to do DoorDash just so I could train more. And I had my first 2 competitions, I had them back to back within a week, and they went really well. But I had this lingering shoulder injury going into the first competition, and it just kind of got a little bit worse. After the second competition, it got a little bit worse, and then I think the day after that second competition, I was training, and the coach, he's trying to show a move to another student, and so he grabbed me by that same shoulder, and he was trying to show a hip toss. I don't know if you guys know what that looks like, but you can look it up. But he was trying to show kind of like a judo hip toss, and he had his arm just, around my shoulder, kind of locking it in place, and he couldn't get it. He couldn't off balance me, because I guess he just wasn't doing it right. I'm not too good at hip tosses, mostly focused on wrestling takedowns, or standard leg takedowns, but he wasn't doing it right. Very clearly, both of us could feel something was off, and so he just yanked it. And immediately, my shoulder went pop, 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 pop. And he did it so hard that it wound up actually spinning me. And so I spun and landed on the mat right on that same shoulder. And it went pop, 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 pop again. I don't know, man, maybe 10 pops. It's crazy. And it was so loud, like other people across the gym could hear it. And I'm not proud of it, but that's the first time, I think, in probably 10 years that I've shed tears from pain. It was the worst pain I've ever felt. And I had a back injury from powerlifting back in high school, where I slipped a disc and I couldn't walk or stand up straight for like 6 months. And this was worse than that. This was like, I could feel like my shoulder was just cut off. Like it just was no longer connected. Just terrible. And right now, like, I don't know if you probably can't see it through my shirt. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. But this right here, I think it's mostly held in place by scar tissue, but this bump, yeah, right there, you can kind of see it a little bit more. It's not supposed to be sticking up like that. It's supposed to be just connected right here. It's supposed to be flat. You can see it more in different positions. Like right there, you can kind of see it. Yeah, that bone right there. So it's still pretty much all but severed. I can barely use that arm. And even just now touching it, it hurts 2 years later. It's just constant pain. I haven't been able to sleep in a bed for 2 years. But all that to say, competing was my dream. I really enjoyed it. I was pretty good at it. I started helping teach some of the classes, so I was getting really involved, really invested with the gym, with the whole martial arts community. I had been watching videos every day for a few years, even before I started training. Like, I was super, super, super passionate about it. And I was willing to, quit my job to make a lot less money doing DoorDash just so I could have the flexibility to train 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. So it was everything to me. It was all I wanted to do. But after that shoulder injury, then pretty much right after, it was one of those things in life. Like when one thing happens, 2 or 3 things happen. Right after that shoulder injury, my girlfriend had texted me maybe a few days later, and she was like freaking out. And she said, my parents told me to pack up my stuff tomorrow, and we're moving by this week, like a few days from now. We're moving. They're canceling their lease, and they had just re-signed their lease on their rental house. And I was like, wait, okay, slow down. What happened? What's going on? So she tells me they just bought land, like almost an hour away. And just out of nowhere, they decided they were just gonna move. They didn't have a house, they didn't have anything, literally nothing. But they're like, we got this land. We're canceling our lease. We're gonna pay for all the whatever early cancellation fees. And we're moving. Get your stuff packed tomorrow. Be ready to move by tomorrow. Wow. Crazy. I guess it runs in the family. Really does. Now that I'm looking back at it. So I'm sitting here with my arm hanging off, and it was a lot worse. Now it's, it's roughly held in place by scar tissue. It still pops when I move it. Like I can feel it with my hand. It's like still pretty loose. It's probably never not gonna be loose. But it was like, I mean, it was like sticking out. It was bad. And I literally, like, I had to just hold my arm with my other arm for probably like 2 weeks. Like, the day it happened, I was barely able to drive home. It was just the worst pain. I just had to scream just to get that pain out. I think I put on some like metal music just to get in the mindset. I was so lightheaded from the pain. I was like struggling to not pass out. Just like a 30-minute drive back home. The worst drive I've ever had. Just resting my arm up on the car door just to hold my shoulder in place. It was bad. But as soon as I got home, I kid you not, for 24 hours, I just nestled my shoulder in the couch. Just found like a nice little crevice in there just to hold the bone in place because my shoulder, it was just moving around. And it was turning like pretty dark. It was like super red at first and then it started to turn like pretty dark afterwards. And I just held it in place there on my knees, nestling into the couch for like 24 hours. I didn't move at all. I didn't sleep, I didn't move, I didn't do anything. My girlfriend came over as I went to my parents' house at the time because it was closer. And my girlfriend had come over and I was just like, hey, could you give me some water? Could you give me a snack? Like, I can't move. So after I had that shoulder injury, now I'm faced with, oh shit, her parents just told her they're gonna move like an hour away. I don't think she had a job at the time, so she didn't have the means to go stay on her own, or have her own place. So it was like, okay, I don't know if this is gonna work if we live an hour away from each other. Like, shit, do we need to go get a place together? Do we need to go get an apartment? And my shoulder's hanging off. I'm doing DoorDash, so I can barely afford anything, but I'm like, okay, I need a lock in here. I need to figure something out. So immediately, just to look at the options, immediately just started looking at places, at apartments nearby, at whatever our options would be. So over the course of the next like 20 days, we wound up finding a place. I wound up finding it just in time, and we moved in there. And I was still doing DoorDash at the time, so I had to hustle and find another job, something that I could get more consistent hours in, something that paid me better. So kind of, definitely caught me by surprise, but it shifted all my priorities because at the time, like I said, I was just wanting to compete. I just got my shoulder pretty much ripped off. I know it doesn't look that bad in the video, but trust me, it's pretty bad. You can hear it popping. People make comments to me all the time about it, like, what was that? Are you okay? I'll just be walking, I'll just like shift, it'll just pop. If you ever had an AC joint tear, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It sucks. You can't even do push-ups. And it's just excruciating pain. Like I said, I haven't slept in a bed for 2 years. I sleep on a chair. I sleep in a chair. I slept in a chair for 2 years. That's how bad it is. Even then, I'll wake up and it'll be like out of place and I'll just be, just terrible pain. But anyways, back to the story. So this whole situation happens and I'm like, God, well, I guess surgery's not on the table. I didn't have insurance. I don't trust health insurance. I've had really bad experiences in my life with them, with other injuries, like I said, with my back. I tore my growth plate in my knee doing cross country a couple years before my back injury, so I've had some pretty gnarly injuries I've gone to the hospital for, and just the whole thing sucks. It sucks here in the US. It sucks. It's terrible. But I was like, okay, I don't have insurance. I can't afford this. And now I need to be getting another job so we can afford a place together, because I don't think she had a job at the time, if I remember correctly. So it was like, okay, everything needs to go on hold for this relationship. So I did that. I wound up getting a warehouse job. It was terrible. It was a cool job, but I was having to lift like 60, sometimes 70-pound like metal parts. I was building motors and gearboxes, so I was having to pick up these big ass, like, huge metal parts. Sometimes I'd have to like lift it off a shelf like overhead. Just sucks just thinking about it. It was terrible, the pain. And I had this like thick shoulder brace just holding it in place. Underneath the shoulder brace, I would get this like sprain wrap and just wrap it super tight, because like I said, at the time my bone was like super loose, just moving around, like it would move back and forth. So I just wrap it as tight as I could. It would leave like impressions in my skin. It would like, rub the skin raw, and I would just put the shoulder brace over it. Just try to hide it through my shirt as much as possible, because it was just super obvious. And I didn't want them to know that my shoulder's disconnected when I'm having to do a manual labor job. So I was just like trying to, stay under the radar, like, hey, nothing to see here, my shoulder's all good. And every like 20 or 30 minutes or so, my arm would go numb because of how tight I had to wrap it just to hold the bone down. Because otherwise I could feel it just like, all the nerves, everything pinching, just like moving, like ripping more, because nothing was holding in place. So I had to wrap it so tight, and then I have to keep going back and forth, taking constant bathroom breaks, like, wait for nobody to be watching me so they don't see me go in the bathroom all the time, start asking questions. Then I have to go and just like take the wrap off, just let my circulation come back, my fingers would be tingling, my arm would be throbbing, and then I'd have to like rewrap it and do it some other way that wasn't so tight. But I had to keep doing that. I did that just the whole time I was at that job. The schedule was pretty nice though. It was just, 6, I think, in the morning to like 3 p.m., something like that. Yeah, it was like 9-hour shifts. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. It was really nice. It was nice to get off that early, but the people were awesome. The job was air conditioned. It was an amazing job. It was really fun, actually. But the lifting was I was in so much pain the whole time. So much pain. And the whole time, I was doing it to try and save the relationship. I was doing it to try and be the financial security, because she was doing like, like little like food jobs here and there, like working at like fast food places, working like a coffee shop, making like minimum wage. And then also, like I said, she started jiu-jitsu, so I was like, okay, she was really enjoying it, and I was like, I can't train right now. I can't train and work, and I have to work, because if not, we're going to be living an hour apart, and this relationship's probably, it just doesn't go too well. And maybe that's just a sign of the relationship, but either way, try being in a relationship with anybody for a year or two where you guys both have opposite schedules and live an hour apart, so you see each other maybe once a week. Even in a healthy relationship, that's going to be extremely difficult, let alone if you have any problems in the relationship. It's just not going to work realistically, and I didn't want it to end. I wasn't ready for it to end. Neither of us did. So I was like, this is the most important thing to me. I want to be the caretaker and the provider, and I want to be a father eventually, and so I want to invest everything I can to this relationship. And I want to, if things work out, marry this person, have kids with her, not at the moment, but, I could definitely see a possibility where that would be the case. So I started working these jobs, these manual labor warehouse jobs. She started training more and more, and I got this other job, and I talked to her about it first, and I was like, hey, so this other guy is offering me a job. It's 12-hour shifts though. And it's on a weird kind of staggered schedule, so you're not working the same days every week. But it's 12 hours. But it paid like, I don't know, at least half again what I was making at my job before that. And I was like, it's gonna be tough with the schedule, but it could be a really good opportunity. It could allow us to, because we were talking pretty seriously about getting a mortgage on a house. Now I don't think that's such a good idea, but we were talking about at the time. And I've always been really on top of finances, so like it wasn't gonna like stretch us that thin financially. I made sure we had plenty of cushion room, but I was like, it could allow us to get to this goal a couple years sooner, so we could be looking at this in the next maybe 2 years. And she was like, yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think you should take that. I was like, okay, that's all I need. If you're on board with it, I'll do it. So I wound up taking that job, and I would have to get up at like, 5 in the morning, drive an hour there, sometimes more with traffic, work 12. A lot of times I would wind up staying later anyways because there'd be issues, or I'd have to, talk to night shift about stuff. So sometimes I'd be there 12 and a half, maybe close to 13 hours, drive an hour back. A lot of times it's more than an hour, sometimes 2 hours, because they were doing construction on the highway. So the way back was a lot worse. So I'd be gone like 15 hours, maybe 16 hours in a work day. And the best I could do was get like 6 hours of sleep. So most of the times I was getting like 5 hours of sleep and then just doing it again. And during this time, she just started training a lot more. And we had an agreement that, since I was working so much more, since I was pretty much devoting all of my time and energy towards my job and towards our finances, making sure that was covered and we were financially secure, didn't ever have to worry about that she would take care of making the dinner whenever I got back, which is a very fair trade, And she was working like 30 hours a week, maybe 25 hours a week, a lot of times. So it was, and when I'd get home, I would have like an hour to eat, sleep, and go to sleep to even get my 6 hours of sleep, which I needed more than that with the amount of stress my body was taking. So that was the arrangement we had, was that every night when I would get back, like there'd be a very limited window for me to be able to eat. And so she would take care of the cooking. And before I had these jobs, I would cook all the meals in our relationship. But I had many conversations with her that, in a relationship, I think everything should be 50-50. It's not like each of you pay 50% of the bills, each of you cook half the meal. It's like if one person's working more in a job, the other person needs to be doing more at the house. It doesn't matter who does what. Like if she's working more and makes more money, then I need to make sure that the house is clean when she gets back. And I need to take care of the meals if she doesn't have time to cook for herself, all that, do store trips, whatever. And I had many conversations with her throughout the course of our relationship of like, are you comfortable with the role you have? Would you rather work more and have me do some of the other stuff? Like what would you rather have? And it was very well agreed upon that the balance we had was, at least from what she told me, was pretty much exactly how we both wanted things. Mostly how she wanted things. I wouldn't have wanted to work as much as I did, but I was willing to make that sacrifice. So towards the end, I started noticing she would be gone at jiu-jitsu. Normally, class would end at like 8, so she'd be back at like 8:30 or 9. But she started being gone till like 10. And I would have to be asleep by like 10 because I'd have to get up at like 5. and we had 2 cats, and one of them would be screaming all night. So, even though I would go down to try and start sleeping with 7 hours, I'd still only get like 6 hours, if even that. But 10 was like my cutoff. Sometimes I would go to bed at like 11, but it really needed to be 10. And she started being gone until like 10. And then she started being gone until like 10:30, and this is in the last like couple months. And so and she wouldn't even communicate with me. Before that, we had really good communication. She'd always tell me like, hey, sorry I was talking to somebody. I was hang out with some of my friends there. I'm sorry, like, I'll be a little bit late. But, like, it won't happen again, whatever. And I would, it's cool. Thank you for letting me know. And then, she would get back, and she would be like, I'm sorry, like, I just got carried away talking to people. And I'd be like, it's okay, but just, keep in mind I do have to be up in the morning. I don't want you to, like, not talk to and hang out with people, but, like, on the days that I have off that you still train, you can stay later on those days, but on the days that I work, I do have to be up in the morning. And she'd be like, yeah, I understand. But towards the end, it started getting, like, she wouldn't even communicate. She would just be gone, and just not even say anything. And then I started to get a little bit irritated about it after a few weeks. Like, hey, you're not even communicating with me. I don't have the time or the energy. I just worked 12, 13 hours. I don't have, and sometimes, like, and she'd also take care of store trips because I was working most of the days out of the week. Like I said, I was working sometimes 60 plus hour weeks, and she was working like 25 hour weeks. So, it was her responsibility to do the store trips and all that too. And so there would be some times where there wouldn't even be like stuff from the store for me to even be able to make anything. And I had no time to be able to do this stuff because I was working that whole week. And so I'd be like, hey, like, what the heck? Like, you're completely just neglecting everything in our relationship pretty much. She was being very, like, non-communicative with me as well. She would be super snappy when I got back, or when she got back, complaining about, like, oh, I still have to cook dinner, I have to do laundry, I have to do all this, like, just really, like, in a bad mood. And that's how I knew something else was up, because those things had never been a problem before. And like I said, we had a very fair arrangement. I'd say it was even unfair towards my end. Because I still did, like, most of the chores around the house. I've always been a very, like, OCD person. And so I would clean the apartment on my off days. I'd spend, like, a couple hours cleaning every morning, take out all the trash. I kept the apartment pretty spotless. Even in spite of how much I was working. But all that to say, things started to get worse and worse. And, that's when I really knew something set in, that, oh, okay, something's going on. She's not communicating anymore. She's not even really trying at all, and she's, like, super combative with me for no reason. Like, we hadn't had any fight. It's just she would get back, and we had barely seen each other, and instead of, like, the normal, like, us hugging each other and me being like, how was your day, all of that, it was just, like, just instant combativeness. So, especially in the last couple years, I really sacrificed pretty much all of my own personal desires, personal hobbies, my passion for jiu-jitsu, my aspirations to do striking and to compete in MMA, all of that. and my finances so I could cover most of the bills for us, and my time. I pretty much lost 2 years, almost 2 full years of my life working 12-hour shifts. And everything just kind of came crashing down all within a month. And like I said, we had problems in our relationship for sure, but those things I was just describing really just started happening the last like month and a half. And they really kicked up like whenever I got back from the trip. There's a very clear change the day I got back from that trip. Like, she didn't even want to say hi to me. When we saw each other, she just like was gonna walk straight past me to go to the bathroom, and I was like, oh, something's up. That's not good. But yeah, I guess it's just a good lesson in life. One, don't put all your eggs in one basket, which I definitely did. Definitely don't put your eggs in one basket. Don't sacrifice your personal life and your personal hobbies for a relationship. Don't ever get rid of who you are for somebody else. Don't ever do that. And also, nothing is guaranteed. Everything's temporary. Everything in life is temporary. Your life itself, you could just die tomorrow. There's no use stressing about it. Life is a blessing. It's amazing to be alive. But you could just die at any time, if that's your time. Your parents could die. Your brother, your sister could die. Your friends could die. And it sounds bleak, but it's just life, man. It's just life. Everything's temporary. Even, I believe death is temporary. Even if you just look at it, you were dead before you were alive. Not even from a religious perspective. Before you were a baby, before you were born, where were you? You were dead. You didn't exist. And even that was temporary. So I believe death, life, friends, family, everything's temporary. And somebody said it really good that I was listening to the other day. He said emotions are like spices for life, but they should never be what guides your decisions. They can make life enjoyable, make it a little bit more spicy. It's like a seasoning for life. But you can't be attached to emotions. And the second you're emotionally attached to something is usually whenever you lose that thing. And then you lose the emotions, and then it feels like something is ripped out of you. And you experience a lot of unnecessary pain. And I guess the pain is necessary at first because it teaches you a lot, but over time, you really have to learn to kind of get over that and not be so emotionally attached to things. I have spent the last 4 years of my life fully dedicated to a person that, by her words and by her actions, I thought was fully dedicated to me, fully committed. I had a great relationship with her family, all of that. Went to family gatherings, went to everything. We were very close, all of us. And I kind of took for granted that was just going to be my life. Everything I did for the last 4 years was kind of centered around that. And within a month, everything changed. 4 years completely gone within pretty much a month. And I know that means, I wasn't the person I was supposed to be with, because things shouldn't crash like that in a month, but they can. If you're with the wrong person, you might not even see it. You might spend years with that person. You could spend 10 years with them. You could marry them and have kids, all that, and it could all change within a few days, really. They could find somebody else. They could be getting attention from somebody else. They could be bored with you and you don't even know it. They might not be communicating it. You might be communicating it, you might be ignoring it, not taking it seriously enough. They could get attention from somebody else, be doing something on the side you don't even realize, because they're really good at hiding it. And then all of a sudden, they're like, I just gotta end this. And then it hits you. And you didn't even see it coming. That could happen. That happens to people all the time. But the lesson there is to not get emotionally attached to people, not to relationships, not to friendships. It's good to experience the emotions and to not be some, cold sociopath. But you have to be able to let go of things, even the things that mean the most to you. And, that's life. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. If you're watching this, I hope you have a good day. I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. I hope you have purpose. If you don't feel like you have that, go find something. Go do something. Go do something you've never done before. Go get uncomfortable, Don't put your purpose in another person, because they'll always disappoint you. All of us are flawed. None of us are perfect. Everybody, if you put your faith in them, is going to disappoint you at some point or another. Doesn't matter who they are. Everyone will eventually disappoint you. And it doesn't mean they're bad. You're going to disappoint people. That's just how we are. So don't put your faith in other people. Not your full faith. Don't become ultimately attached to any person, and definitely never put your life meaning into another person. Your life is your life. And nobody else can live that for you. Nobody else can give that meaning or purpose for you. So, I hope you have a great day. And yeah, that's it.